Have you ever wondered how much our childhood shapes our future? A question we might not give much thought to, but one that bears heavy significance for our protagonist. His tale begins in the heart of a turbulent household where the specters of addiction loomed large. This young man was born into a world where the norm was parents clouded by a haze of drug abuse and alcoholism. He was a child, yes, but his innocence was stolen by the very people who should have nurtured it. His home, which should have been a sanctuary, was instead a battleground. Each day was a new skirmish, with verbal and physical altercations that were as predictable as they were chaotic. Imagine growing up in an environment where love was masked by intoxication, where the line between right and wrong was blurred by the fog of addiction. A place where the very people who were meant to guide you, to show you the path to a bright future, were instead stumbling in the dark, lost in their own vices. This young man, instead of playing with toys, was navigating through the shards of broken bottles. Instead of learning about life from bedtime stories, he was witnessing the harsh realities of addiction and its devastating consequences. His childhood was a shadowy maze of uncertainty, fear, and instability. But in this chaos, a pattern emerged. The young man started mirroring what he saw, adopting the habits and behaviors that were laid bare before him. It was as if he was walking in the footsteps of his parents, tracing a path that was all too familiar yet terrifyingly unknown. The seeds of addiction were sown in the fertile soil of this troubled upbringing, and so he grew, shaped by the shadows of his childhood. A young man, who should have been exploring the wonders of life, was instead grappling with the demons of addiction. A legacy he neither asked for nor wanted, but one he couldn't escape from. This troubled childhood planted the seeds of addiction in the young man's life. How often do we follow the paths laid out by our circumstances, unaware of where they might lead? As a child, the young man was a silent observer in the theater of his parents' tumultuous lives. Their habits and behaviors were the only examples he had, and so as he grew older he found himself treading the same path. It started subtly, a sip of beer here, a puff of smoke there. The allure of forbidden substances was strong, and the young man, in his naivete, was drawn in. He was a moth to the flame, unaware of the destructive power it held. As time passed, these seemingly innocent experiments spiraled into a full-blown addiction. His life became a whirlwind of highs and lows. He was shackled by his cravings, a slave to the substances that promised him a temporary escape from reality. But these moments of fleeting pleasure came with a hefty price. His health deteriorated, his relationships crumbled, and his dreams faded into the background. The young man found himself in a vortex of self-destruction. He was like a ship caught in a storm, tossed around by the waves of addiction with no land in sight. His friends and loved ones watched in despair as he descended further into the abyss. He was a mere shadow of his former self, a prisoner in his own life. He was embroiled in a constant battle with his demons, a battle he seemed to be losing. His life was a living nightmare, a cycle of substance abuse and regret. The pain and suffering he experienced were immeasurable, a heavy burden he carried with him each day. Yet amidst the chaos there was a glimmer of hope, a spark of realization that his life was spiraling out of control. This was not the life he had envisioned for himself, and deep down, he yearned for change. He was walking down a path of destruction, mirroring the life he had seen unfolding in his childhood. Yet the story doesn't end here. The young man was about to embark on a journey of recovery and redemption. And this journey would change his life forever. Can a single moment change the course of our lives? Let's delve into the story of our protagonist at this critical juncture. He found himself at the precipice of a dangerous abyss, the same one his parents had fallen into. But there was a twist in his tale. On one fateful day, a group of people stepped into his life, a beacon that would guide him on a new path. They were his friends, his mentors, people who cared for him and saw his potential, even when he couldn't see it himself. They were the ones who dared to intervene, to confront him with the harsh reality of his situation. Picture this, a room filled with the people he loved and respected, their faces etched with concern and determination. The air was heavy with anticipation and anxiety. They spoke to him not with anger or judgment, but with compassion and honesty. They held up a mirror to his life, a reflection that was difficult to face but impossible to ignore. They told him about the dreams he once had, the future he could still have. They reminded him of his talents, his passions, his potential to be more than just a product of his circumstances. They painted a picture of a life free from the shackles of addiction, a life where he could thrive, not just survive. And then, they offered him a lifeline, a glimmer of hope. They told him about rehab, about therapy, about how it's never too late to seek help. They reassured him that they would be there every step of the way, supporting him, cheering him on. This intervention was a turning point, a pivotal moment that marked the end of his self-destruction and the beginning of his journey towards recovery. It was the moment he realized he didn't have to follow in his parents' footsteps, that he had the power to break the cycle, to rewrite his story. It was a stark wake-up call, a beacon of hope in the midst of his darkest hours. Is the journey to recovery ever smooth? Well, the road to recovery, like any road worth traveling, is rarely ever smooth. It's a journey filled with potholes of temptation, detours of despair, and roadblocks of relapse. But it's also a journey marked by milestones of courage, perseverance, and resilience. Our young man, stepping away from the shadow of his parents' vices, found himself on this very road. The struggle was real and it was intense. His body craved the very poison he was trying to expel. His mind was a battleground, constantly waging war between the need for another hit and the desire for a better life. Every day was a new challenge. The initial euphoria of making a positive change was often overshadowed by withdrawal symptoms. The physical discomfort was one thing, but the emotional turmoil was another beast altogether. He was haunted by guilt, regret, and self-reproach. He wrestled with the fear of falling back into his old habits and the anxiety of what lay ahead. But it wasn't all turmoil and despair. There were moments of triumph, too, moments when he realized he was stronger than he ever gave himself credit for. He discovered that he possessed a will of steel, a determination that refused to be beaten down by setbacks. And there were setbacks, plenty of them. The road to recovery wasn't a straight path. It was more like a labyrinth with twists and turns that often led him back to square one. But with each setback, he learned a valuable lesson. He learned that failure isn't falling down, it's refusing to get back up. But the most challenging aspect of his struggle towards recovery was confronting his past. He had to face the ghosts of his parents' addiction, the memories of their fights, and the pain of their self-destruction. He had to forgive them, and more importantly, forgive himself. Recovery was more than just quitting drugs and alcohol. It was a battle, a struggle against himself and his past. But he was a warrior, armed with courage and determination, ready to fight for his chance at a better life. Recovery was a battle, a struggle against himself and his past. Can one truly overcome their past and build a better future? This question hung in the air for our young man as he embarked on his journey of recovery. He had to face the demons of his past, confront the habits that had held him in a destructive cycle. But he was determined. He had a vision of a life that was far removed from the chaotic world he had known. When the young man finally overcame his addiction, it was not a moment of fanfare or celebration. It was a quiet realization. A day like any other, but marked by the profound understanding that he was no longer a prisoner of his cravings. He had made it through the darkness and was standing, perhaps a little surprised, in the light of a new day. In his recovery, he found strength he didn't know he possessed. He found resilience in the face of adversity and courage to keep going even when the path was steep and rocky. He found compassion for others who were still struggling and a deep-seated desire to help them in their journey. His achievements in recovery were not measured in awards or accolades, but in the small victories of everyday life. A job well done, a relationship mended, a temptation resisted. The changes he made in his life were not grand gestures, but small, consistent choices that added up to a whole new way of living. The success he found was not in material wealth or status, but in the richness of a life lived with purpose and integrity. He was successful not because he had overcome addiction, but because he had learned to live beyond it. He had discovered his true worth, not defined by his past, but by the person he had become. He had triumphed over his addiction, breaking free from the chains of his past. His story serves as a beacon of hope for those still caught in the grip of addiction, a testament to the transformative power of recovery. His journey reminds us that no matter how dark the past, the future can always be brighter. What does a life beyond addiction look like? It's a question that might seem impossible to answer when you're in the throes of it. But our protagonist, our beacon of hope, gives us a glimpse into the possibilities that lie on the other side of the struggle. After overcoming his addiction, the young man's life takes on a new hue. The dark clouds of despair have parted, and in their place, the sun of resilience shines brightly. His life, once dominated by the shadows of his parents' substance abuse, now becomes a testament to the power of personal transformation. The young man's achievements post-recovery are not solely defined by the materialistic measures of success. Yes, he has built a career for himself, one that provides him with financial stability, something he never had growing up. But his true achievements lie in the personal milestones he has reached, in the relationships he has fostered, and in the man he has become. He has cultivated a life of balance, a healthy mix of work and play. His weekends are no longer lost to the haze of drugs and alcohol, but rather are filled with the simple joys of life. Be it a hike up the nearby trails, a quiet afternoon spent reading, or a dinner with friends, he savors each moment, each breath. His happiness, once elusive, is now a constant companion. It's found in his newfound self-respect, in the love and support he receives from those around him, and in the satisfaction he derives from his work. He has learned to appreciate the beauty of a life lived consciously, a life lived fully. The young man's life post-addiction is a testament to the fact that change is possible, that it's never too late to rewrite your story. Yes, the journey is tough, the road is long, and the obstacles are many. But the rewards, oh, the rewards are worth every bit of the struggle. He had found a new life, one filled with success and happiness. His story serves as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, the potential for a brighter tomorrow always exists. What lessons can we learn from such a journey? Let's take a moment to look back at the road our young man has traveled, from his early days shadowed by his parents' struggles, to his own descent into addiction, and finally, his triumphant recovery. It's a journey packed with lessons for all of us, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of change. Firstly, let's consider how our environment shapes us. Growing up in a household where drug abuse and alcoholism were the norm, our young man came to perceive these behaviors as normal. The fighting, the chaos, the pain, it all became part of his worldview. But it's important to remember that our early environments don't have to dictate our destinies. We can choose to step out of the shadows of our past and make different choices for our future. This leads us to the second lesson, the power of intervention. When our young man was at his lowest, it was an intervention that provided a lifeline. It's a reminder that help can come in many forms, and often it's the people who care about us who can make the biggest difference. Whether it's a friend, a teacher, a counselor, or a support group, reaching out for help is a crucial step towards recovery. The third lesson comes from the struggle of recovery itself. Overcoming addiction is never easy. It's a journey marked by setbacks, frustrations, and moments of despair. But it's also marked by resilience, determination, and courage. It's about facing your demons, making peace with your past, and learning to live a different way. It's a process, not a destination. And it's a process that's worth every step. And finally, we come to the most powerful lesson of all, the possibility of a better life beyond addiction. Our young man didn't just overcome his addiction, he built a new life for himself, a life of success, a life of happiness, a life he could be proud of. It's a stark reminder that no matter how far we've fallen, no matter how bleak things seem, there's always the potential for redemption and growth. In the end, our young man's journey is more than just a tale of recovery. It's a story of transformation, of the power of the human spirit to overcome adversity and forge a new path. It's a story that reminds us that we are not defined by our past, but by our capacity to change, to grow, to become better versions of ourselves. His journey is a testament to the strength of the human spirit, a reminder that it's never too late to change our paths.